Hey, what's up, everybody? JB here. We have another special edition coming your way. The topic that so many of you just absolutely love and adore and loathe all at the same time, that being college pathway. You read your dashboard. You know who the guest is. He is a multi-timer on the infamously famous SDP. We are going to be talking about the upcoming event, MLS NEXT Flex, which is literally in 24 hours from now, less than that for some games. So depending on the time you're listening to this, it's either in advance. If you catch this afterwards, don't fret, because we're going to be giving you information that pertains to 365 days of the year. So you're lucky. There you go. You can say thank you by, I'll put my Venmo handle in the show notes here. But without further ado, the man, the myth, the Boston legend who is now eating that shitty chili down in Cincy. No offense to chili lovers, or Cincinnati for that matter. Andy Fleming, what's up, dude?
Good midday. I was going to say morning, afternoon with the time difference. I'll just say midday, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. That's all good, man. Everybody's like, this is a 24-hour podcast, so it doesn't matter. Let's get this thing going. We talked about a few things that we wanted to cover today before we started recording. I think it's going to be awesome for those of you listening. We're gonna cover Flex. We're gonna cover, which really is kind of code for any showcase, but prepping for the showcases, the difference in the years and the graduates, what these coaches are looking for, who's going to be at these events, what kind of offers you're going to get and or not get, and when you might expect to get them. And what do you do when you roll out of there from camps, et cetera. And then we're going to touch on a little bit of new news as it pertains to the NCAA and rules regarding eligibility, players, age, et cetera, so they say. So first things first, not only are you an ex-coach, now recruiter, player, et cetera, you are a dad, which means you are a soccer dad, and congratulations are in order, because you are the cobbler whose kids' shoes you just had to cobble. Let's talk a little bit about that commitment. Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. It's funny. I always tell parents I'm a former 25-year Division I coach, so that makes me unique. I'm not 27 years old. I'm 51 years old, so I've been around the block a little bit. I'm on the other side of the desk. And then I found myself in the last year throwing in like, hey, I'm also the parent of a junior who's going through this process. So that was interesting in that probably a lot of dads will chuckle. Nobody in my house listens to me, and they continue not to listen to me during the recruiting stuff. And I tried to say, hey, listen, this is the one thing I know actually something about. But Braden committed to Loyola with Kevin Robeson probably about 6 weeks ago. And I'll just share a couple of things. I won't get into it too much. Haven't even posted in social media yet. I'm really worried about, coming across the wrong way and being overly proud or bragging about my kid. But what I thought would be interested, and I know you and I agreed to talk about this another time at length as far as a dad's perspective on this.
Process.
He had the dream school, Indiana, that didn't happen. That happened at their winter camp in January. I remember he went home and I stayed for the second session, and that was a sad day because I felt like the dream died that day. And they didn't actually tell us. I could just tell and feel it. So number one, like, he had that dream school. Number two, Kevin Robeson had him on his camp team, I think 4 different times over the years. And Kevin Robeson saw him play in Arizona in December. I thought he did pretty well. But he was also at IMG in February, and he had some quiet games, and it was a quiet event. And I do remember going to get an ice cream after that final game on the final day with my son. And we were kind of sad and kind of quiet. It wasn't a great event for him. And I'll be honest, during the visit, Roby said, I've seen you have some good days and some bad days, but I thought you handled the bad days well. And I thought I could still tell that you're a pretty good player. Test optional school. He didn't have a good ACT. Sports management major. That's what he wants to do. 5 hours from home, and in a reasonable playing level, a reasonable conference, a program that I don't think he's going to come in and start right away. And a lot of the visit was about, like, hey, when things aren't going your way, this is how it's going to be the first year. Can you handle it? Versus this is going to be great. And I think the last thing, just to kind of give perspective, is this is not a box of chocolates with a bow on the top. This is hey, right now we have you coming in January of 28. He's a 27 grad. But if we move some roster pieces and have some availability, that will slide up to August. So it's largely TBD. It wasn't exactly how he wanted. There was some frustration. There was some worry because he didn't play well a couple of times, but overall it went well. And I will tell you, I share the sentiment of my son didn't play. He was injured. The school was there. He scored a great goal at St. Louis camp. And I'm still mad at Constantine for not having the camera on the side of the parking garage on. He missed that. He scored a great goal at Indiana camp. Butler, I turn around. They're not in the chair. And then the last game he had before he committed, he played 10 minutes and wasn't playing well and has played 70 plus, I think, the last 4 games. So just to share the ups and downs. But yeah, proud, excited, but wanted to share the trials and tribulations because this isn't a linear process for any of us.
Well, we can dumb this all down. That was we'll get the full story later, but the kid's going to Chicago. He's got a St. Louis coach who spent 20 plus years at Indiana. It's a win.
Yeah,
it's a win across the board. So, also I told you I wanted to mention an anecdotal story as it pertains to agents generally, but you specifically, a local client that you recently secured. And I'm not going to name names. I'm just going to tell the story because for those of you listening, when it comes to the decision-making process as to whether to use an agent, to not use an agent, and more importantly, if you do make the decision that that's what you want to do, what are you looking for in an agent? This particular person told me they basically had interviewed 3 people. One of the individuals was from out of market. And when they did talk to me, they were like, what do you think? And I'm like, well, one thing you really want, in my opinion, you want somebody that understands you and where you're from and what's close and what matters. So if somebody's 2-3 time zones away, not that they can't do their job. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying there's a little bit of a difference when it comes to the connectivity, and they kind of agreed. So they spoke to 2 individuals that have deep roots, Andy, you being one of them, obviously, here in the Midwest in particular, that have access to all 4 time zones, right? Going in the opposite direction. But I think what sold them, and this is a direct quote, and I'm paraphrasing the quote, but it was basically like, once we talked to him, it was very direct. And part of the early process was determining, okay, where do you guys think you are? We sent our list, and he immediately picked up the phone less than a minute later after receiving the email and saying, what the hell are you guys thinking? This is not realistic. And again, I'm paraphrasing, but that sold them. And this is why it matters, because part of this process as parents and as players is you really have to accelerate your timeline when it comes to who are you, where do you fit, and that doesn't mean a particular address or a school, private, public, any of that. It means at what level. Start there. Once you get to that, then you can start to look at all the X's and O's. And if you want to add multiple boxes to the list as to what you're looking for in degree or temperature or oceans or mountains or all that other stuff, that's after the fact. Get to where your value and expectation. And if you want to go above that, well, then talk about what you need to do to get there. But don't just start with dream list exclusively. And if somebody says, oh, this is a great list, out of the gate, you should question them. That's my PSA for the moment. Congratulations. Again, I think you probably know more about that. Go ahead, chime in.
Yeah. Well, I just think also, think about it. If your club coach says, we don't think you're good enough to play in the Big Ten, you're going to be mad and probably want to leave. You know what I mean? So I think it doesn't have to be me, but I think most families should have a third party that doesn't live in their house as a voice for the teenager, and then, doesn't work in the club. Somebody said to me the other night, some people in this club get put off by you because you're honest. And I said, well, think about what you just said. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to help and tell the truth. But in this club experience, in this money grab, if you will, there's not a lot of truth that comes along because they're afraid of losing memberships. And I get that. So that kind of ties into what you said as well, where the value lies.
Yeah. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Into the family. I think knowing the family, I think it's a good fit. And for those of you listening, look, and I've told Andy this, this, I've got a very small list of those who I would suggest. In fact, it's less than 3, and I keep it that way on purpose. So, this is not a paid for PSA at all. I just want to kind of put that up there because when I do talk to parents and when they reach out in just these casual conversations, It's really managing that expectation up front that I think is most paramount. Everything else secondary matters, but it's a long process.
And
Let's talk about
I'll Venmo you tomorrow morning. Thanks.
yeah, just buy me beer, man. I'm way simpler than that. Let's talk about Flex. That is the showcase right around the corner here. Unique showcase, and talking to a lot of coaches, and I think you would agree. I agree, having seen Fest, Flex, GA playoffs over the past 4 years at this level. Flex to me just hits a little bit different, and I think it's because there's something to play for literally in every game. It's not overextended. You got one group, 3 games, and you're out, but it's important that you win, which is very different from some of the other events. What's your take on Flex, just generically compared to the other events, and why do you like it more or dislike it, whatever it might be?
It's funny, when I was a college coach, I didn't go to it because I just thought we just finished the spring. We had to do player meetings, and the summer was around the corner, and May was often a time we didn't have a lot to do. And in my job now, I think it's, I think the NAC event in February is probably one, and this is my second favorite event. I do find the playoffs or the dog days of summer, it's hot. The kids are run down. I think if you're in the losers bracket or the old showcase games they used to have, there could be a lack of motivation. But I think the timing of this is great. Now, what's interesting too is because of the World Cup, everything's kind of squeezed in. So what's good for kids, especially juniors, I think you're going to get a expedited process where you might get an offer, have some feedback and clarity sooner than normal. And then for the families, you actually have a bigger window to do camps because MLS shuts down on June 1. So I do think it's very user friendly, and it's going to help the kids who need camps, or you can kind of, eat out of both sides of the plate, so to speak. Couple things to think about though. And I told 4 kids this yesterday, like, hey, a dad from Scott Gallagher said recently, hey, our team's rolling. We came in first place, the under 17s, even the 19s. And I said, yeah, but you know what? Like, that's great. But coaches want individuals. And obviously they want to look at winning teams. But you could have a winning team, and you and I've talked about this before. Man, they get 11 good pieces that have synergy, that work well together. But they only got like 3 really true Division I prospects. Then there's other teams who notoriously have 7 or 8 studs, dysfunction, not well coached, maybe really athletic, and there's no defensive principles, no culture. And sometimes we're going to go look for the individuals, but also watch a good team and hoping we'll pull guys out of that. Sometimes you'll get a nod because you're on a winning team. But what I'm getting at is if you're not in the winner's bracket, if you don't advance, you start off 0-2. If you're losing the game 4-0 and a college coach comes over, it doesn't matter. They don't care about that. So going through it and finishing it, doing well when things aren't going well, being down 3-0. I'm coming on for 20 minutes. There's nobody here in the first half. There's people here in the second half. We have an 8 a.m. game. There's all sorts of little moments where I think the average 17-year-old brain chooses not to compete or chooses to think that it's not an opportunity, but I think there's a lot there. That's kind of the consensus of it. The timing's great. I think the venue's great. I did see possible lightning on Saturday, which some of us have PTSD from Nashville a year ago, but It is a good venue. It's a very manageable venue for college coaches. It's not huge, and I do think a lot of people are excited and it will be well attended.
So let's break down the event specifically by grade year, because there's a little bit of a different strategy / mindset or approach that's becoming a little bit more predictable, especially in today's recruiting environment. 2026s are seniors. They are graduating literally in 30 days plus, right? There's big chunks that, coming up through the system that have probably already committed. But what is really kind of amazing to me, and I would like you to speak to this, is even if you are 26, there are a ton of programs that are still filling the pipe. Can you talk about the 26s in particular, and then we can jump to the 27s, which is kind of the meat and potatoes of the event, being predominantly juniors, able to talk to, able to do everything, and then we'll talk about the 28s and prep there. Start with the 26s. What would you say to them right now if they're not committed?
We have 3 kids who are still yet to be committed. A couple of them are close. I do think there's openings. I do think there's a lot of player meetings going on this week where guys are going to get released and there's openings. I do think there's other programs where they're hoping, or guys will come in and surprise them and tell them that they're leaving, and then there's openings. I will tell you though, unless you have a coach say, hey, and we have 4 or 5 of them, we have a spot for you, but you got to take a gap semester and you can come in January. Or, hey, We want you. We can get you in the program, but you got to take a gap year, or you've had a major injury and had Division I interest. All you people that talk about gap years, it's not going to make you that much better. And I think it's inevitable. And if it is Division III, I think you just go. That's the first thing. Okay. So that's the first part. But 2026s, there are openings. Now that's great. But don't forget, on the other side of this, in about 10 days is May 1, and the transfer portal opens. And all of a sudden, these openings that you sense are there are all of a sudden occupied by people with work experience. And you're adding 1,000 more candidates, as well as professional teams in England releasing kids or not signing them at age 18. And now you have a couple thousand people coming into the job market. So if you're a 26, there's still going to be openings. People are looking. But I will tell you, if you are a 27, even with an offer, don't wait too long, because all of a sudden there's other people coming in the fold soon. And I would be careful to wait for 15 new schools that a lot of you expect to come into touch after Flex to do so.
So let's talk about the back half of the 27s in particular, because there are, a much smaller number of 27s that have actually committed. There's a decent number that have significant interest to the point of offers, may or may not be on the clock. But the lion's share of the 27 class is really kind of moving into the hunting season for most of these programs. Talk about the time frame of expectation, because as much as Flex is great and everybody's going to be there, these coaches aren't going to be on the sideline with, contract sheets ready to just sign people walking off. Talk about what they might want to expect as far as potential next steps for those that do perform well, that kind of meet the moment and stay on individuals' boards and or accelerate the conversations. What would you say to them as far as the next 2 weeks, 30 days, 90 days to expect?
It's funny. I like to use analogies and tell stories, but I was just trying to think of, hey, these girls like you and they're talking to you, and the summer's coming, but don't forget, all these boys are coming back to your town from college for the summer that are a year older that know these girls. That's kind of what the transfer portal's like. I will tell you, there's a lot going on with juniors. A lot of visits, a lot of kids committing, a lot of offers, a lot of action, a lot of calls. And I like that. But I do think if you have an offer and they say, we want to know right after Flex, you're going to be real careful, again, because all of a sudden you can be pushed aside for somebody in the portal. But there is junior action going on. I always worry about and have to deal with the March stanza leading into April. It reminds me when we were young and getting engaged. Someone's going to get engaged first. Then all the girlfriends go crazy and they argue with you and they want to get engaged. Most of us got engaged in a similar window, and then someone was last, and somebody maybe doesn't get engaged at all. And that's what these commitments are like and offers are like, where I think my son was the second one on his team in March, and then there was one or two kids on other teams in early March or February, and I get a lot of calls. And this largely happens in the next couple of weeks here, but don't forget the portal, which is what makes that difference, and it might kind of defer it a little. But for juniors, the next 4 to 6 weeks are important. There's a lot going on. I think you can expect a gun to your head a little bit more if you had an offer or interest prior to Flex or after Flex to hear from some new schools.
All right. So 28s, I want to be brief on this because I think, and you probably will agree, if you're a sophomore, if you're not clear cut, true 1%er, which the market will tell you that, relax, take deep breaths. June 15th is around the corner, but because of all the things that we just talked about and described, from portal to internationals to late signings in general, the reduced roster count, which is still sending waves through the marketplace, just implemented last season. What would you tell a 28 to focus on? Maybe not worry, because I'm going to tell them don't worry.
And this goes to the parent, especially the dads. Like if I have 20 kids, I think 8 of them are getting calls on June 15th. July 1 used to be the date, and we couldn't talk to the kids at all, and it was like a big deal. And I remember calling 45 kids on July 1 at one time. It's not so much like that anymore. And if they do call, they really can't have you visit for a little bit after that. So it's really just a call to get their name in there. Okay. I do equate this summer, if you're a rising junior, to like the summer before our senior year of college, just to give the parents an idea. You don't need to have a job, but you should have a resume. Maybe you're doing an internship. You should start thinking about what you want to do. And I always joke, my summer camps, there's a couple kids I always know summer after their junior year, they won't be back working camps because they're corporate guys and they're going to be doing internships. Then there's other guys that are going to be working camps for a while. So think like a junior. And for me, just to finish off the 28s, it is the most underutilized stanza in the recruiting process is probably from April 1 to August 1, leading into junior year, as far as getting a sense of reality, getting a sense of the consensus and marketplace, doing some camps, being ready to call and deal with the calls, because those are interviews, and the four doors are playing well, finances, academics, but nobody talks about being ready for the interview and interviewing well. And I think having some type of framework of tell me about yourself, what's important to a school, tell me your story, an opening statement, a personal statement for June 15th, whether you get calls or not, it wouldn't hurt to have that ready.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, let's transition out of Flex a little bit and talk about, I want to bring up camps. We kind of alluded to them a little bit earlier. And just through my own personal experience with my son and, you know, some of the other kids that are in market that are really high quality players, can't, you know, most people when they think of camps, the knee jerk reaction is like, oh, it's a money grab. You know, they're fleecing you. You know what? These programs are underfunded. Camps help fund them. So let's get that out of the way first and foremost. But when you have a traffic jam of talent all over the country, camps do serve a purpose, because you can get in another lane in which your car is now a little bit more visible. Take a second and talk about, you know, the role of camps in your opinion, you know, for kids that know what level is a good level for them. How should they be approaching camps? And A, should they? B, how should they? You know, and give me some anecdotal reasons why it makes sense.
It's funny because the kids that are really good or end up at a school, the camps aren't a ripoff to them, are they? It's only the people that didn't get picked from them. Okay.
Correct.
And I think that's the first thing. And I always say a camp is like a job fair on the campus of a company you want to work at. You might not get the face time you want. You might feel like you didn't get, you know, to speak with the people as much as you wanted to, but you also got a feel for what the place is like. So it's a two-way street. I think you should go to 4 camps, 3. 1 should be a specific school. Maybe one's a reach. 1 you feel pretty good about. And then I always say at least 1 or 2 are kind of bang for your buck, where there's multiple schools at them. So you can kind of check a lot of boxes all at once. Do people know these camps inside out? No. Are they money grabs? Yes. Are the emails well crafted and believable? Yes. But that's why, again, you hire somebody to sift through these, who does this for a living, who knows the jokers and knows the market. And if all else fails, to pick the phone up and just say, actually, do you know this kid? And I had 3 coaches tell me last week, no, we don't know him, but his video looked all right, and we're trying to get kids to come to camp. Thanks for telling me the truth. Okay, so if you're an ECNL, you probably going to do more camps, because those events are spread out, not as well attended as MLS. But again, if you really like a school, go, because it will differentiate yourself. And I will tell you, especially the elite academic schools, especially the Power 5 schools, because they can kind of pick and choose, what I call spearfish a little bit. They value their camps, and certainly there are some franchise ones that I don't think are very good, but you know, they have value, they're worth it. And the last thing I'll tell you, like my wife did say to me, can we call Loyola if we think that's where he really wants to go, and just see if we can do the visit soon and kind of speed this up? Because I was tired of going to camps, and my son wasn't a good camp player. We were getting just a little sick of the process. And, you know, again, you know, they can get tiring, but they're part of it.
Yeah. Finally, the one thing I want to talk about is some news coming down. Just a second ago, I mentioned some of the rules changes that went into effect last year, specifically the roster cap of 28. Previously, there really wasn't a cap. Some of these programs, even the dream programs, would carry 38, 39, 40 plus players. So when the roster cap was put into place, there were a whole bunch of players that either had to decide they really liked the school or they went elsewhere, which created another issue as far as availability goes. Some of the new news coming down the pipe out of the NCAA are a few other rules changes in regards to eligibility, when the clock starts, et cetera. Can you take a second and give the 10,000-foot view of, you know, the highlight of the rules that are being proposed and how you view them impacting college soccer and recruiting moving forward?
And again, I have a network still at the Big East office, assistant commissioner, someone who works at the NCAA, and then senior women administrators, compliance people at 2 universities who I check in with. So what's funny is I always get it from the horse's mouth before I kind of advise people, but also there's still a lot of gray area and TBD, but it's largely in the direction of the consensus of you're going to have 5-year window starting at your high school graduation or your 19th birthday, whatever comes first. And you're going to have 5 years to do 5 years. So if I tear my ACL twice and I miss 2 seasons, you still only get 5 years. It's largely to prevent the 25-year-old international soccer player, but also to prevent the 7th-year senior playing quarterback for Jacksonville State, who's making $3 million on NIL and taking the opportunity of these kids who, are high school athletes and did their due diligence. What remains to be seen, and we have 3 clients with MLS2 offers. And we have other clients who have gone on and bypassed college and are playing in the lower ranks of professional soccer in this league, in this country. Is that going to be like an NBA G League thing? Is that going to be like a Quebec Major Junior Hockey thing where you can get paid and come back and still play or not? That remains to be seen. But for us, for most of our clients, for our kids, for our clubs, this is great news because it's going to eliminate some of those older international guys, the 6-year senior, and it's going to trim some fat and provide more opportunities. And I think that's certainly positive.
Last thing I want to point out, I said that was the last, but this is the last, and it actually follows up on this. I had a little fun scrolling the other day, and one of my favorite players of all time, I don't know why I'm drawn to this guy. Maybe it's just my own bad attitude, but Zlatan was quoted, and there was an Instagram post talking about the NCAA, and I'm going to read the quote to you and see what you think in regards to the age-old arm wrestling match between, or really disrespect is what it is, between U.S. soccer and college soccer. Here's the quote. I see the college system in the U.S. as very strong. It's like a factory producing professional athletes. If you look at the infrastructure and the way they build the body and the mind, it's a great preparation for the professional world, period, end quote. When you hear a guy like Zlatan, who, he lived here, he has kids here, he knows enough about the game. Clearly, he never played college soccer, right? He's never been a college soccer coach. But I'm pretty sure he knows what talent looks like and what mindset means. When you hear an individual like that talk about college soccer in such a positive light, knowing that there's been this brain-body break between U.S. soccer and college soccer historically, how does that make you feel?
I always laud you because you guys are pro college soccer. I've made my living out of college soccer. I'm a college soccer guy. I don't claim to be anything else. I think in our country, I follow hockey and basketball, especially in other podcasts quite a bit, and they don't talk about how bad their sport is and what's wrong with it all the time. We have some opinions on this podcast. You guys do a good job at discussing it, but man, it's just so funny. Everybody just talks about how bad U.S. soccer is and what's wrong with it versus like celebrating it. I think college soccer is great. I think it's robust. I think it's solid. It's missing a couple of dimensions it could have added. We missed out on some opportunities. It's lacking in a way. But I think that says a lot, and I think it's in a good place. And again, there's so many families that on the first Zoom, well, I want to be a pro. All right, well, why don't you be a great under-18 player? Why don't you be an effective college player? And every once in a while, there's a wonder kid who they have no business going to college, and it makes no sense. But everybody's in such a hurry to poo-poo it or skip it, and I think it's great, and I think this rule is going to help us Americans and the landscape we talk about so much with the opportunities after kind of going through a tough spot where I think we lost it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I think it's I've seen enough to know in my little micro world under the arch here. A really good high level college soccer player, put them in the mix anywhere on any 2-team or in any academy, and they're going to be just fine. And they are trained to win because there's only one goal. It's not player development. They got a 2.5-month, 3-month season to lift a cup, right? Yeah. And I think that's the intangible that we all ignore far too often. So, Andy Fleming, I'm going to let you go here. I'm sure I'm going to see you rolling around on your illegal little bike down there in Dallas.
Yeah, we'll see what security does. I'm a little nervous. I have one rented. I'm going to pick it up in Richardson, Texas tomorrow night at 6:00. Look for the man on the bike. And again, you parents, my content is centered towards parents. It's centered around reality and the truth. I look at some of these other guys. They show locker rooms and cleats and stadiums and all this drip and all this kind of swag stuff to try to engage the 17-year-old. I'm not in really sales. I'm in far as like helping and educating and kind of getting you through the truth and what's, real versus kind of engaging you through some of the fluff.
There you go. That's the paid for advertisement. That one I will charge you for.
Yep.
All right, everybody, we're going to take off here. Andy, hold on 1 second. For the rest of you, I'm going to cut out. Like, review, follow, share. Thanks for all your time and attention. And I'll be sure to have a link to Andy's Insta page. Well, it's pretty easy to find it. You can do that too. But I will have a link if you want to go check it out. Until next time, JB here, Soccer Dad Pod. Later.